Ever notice how after a nice little getaway, that credit card bill hits different? Like suddenly date night's looking a lot like ramen noodles and Netflix.
Right. Nothing kills the mood faster than financial stress.
Exactly. It can turn even the smoothest sailing relationship into, well, bit of a rocky voyage. We're tackling those choppy waters today. We're diving deep into those classic tips for navigating finances as a couple, the ones you hear all the time. Communicate openly, make a plan, that kind of thing.
Yeah, those tips are everywhere, but honestly, they're often about as helpful as a map without a compass.
Totally. So we're breaking out the compass today, figuring out not just what those tips say, but how to actually put them into practice.
Absolutely. Let's make those generic tips work for your relationship, not against it.
Music to my ears. So that whole communicate openly thing, easier said than done sometimes, right? Like sometimes you just want to dodge the money talk altogether, especially when tensions are already running a little high. But does avoiding those conversations actually make matters worse in the long run?
It really can, yeah. It's like sweeping dust under the rug. You think you're creating a cleaner look for the moment, but eventually you're going to trip over a mountain of dirt.
I love that analogy. So how can couples push past that fear of conflict and actually have, productive money talks? Not the kind that ends in slam doors and shouting matches.
One really effective technique is using I statements. So instead of saying, you're always blowing our budget on those fancy coffees, try something like, I get a little stressed when we overspend on coffee because it makes me worry about our savings goals. See, it's just the tone.
Oh, interesting. So it's about expressing your feelings without pointing fingers.
Precisely. It takes the blame out of the equation,
Yeah,
which is essential for healthy communication.
makes sense. Okay, next up is creating a financial plan together. Sounds great in theory, but what about those couples where one person's, well, let's just say they wouldn't know a spreadsheet if it jumped up and bit them?
That's where collaboration, not criticism, is key. Remember, you're on the same team, right? So instead of turning those conversations into lectures or eye-rolling sessions, try to find a system that clicks with both of your learning styles. Some people are visual learners, so ditch the boring old spreadsheets and opt for a visual tracker instead.
Speaking of visual, what exactly is a visual tracker? Like, I've heard the term thrown around, but
Oh, it's a game changer, especially for those who struggle with traditional budgeting methods. Imagine a colorful chart. You can even use a bullet journal where you visually represent your income, expenses, and savings goals. Kind of brings a bit of life to those numbers.
oh, so it's like a real-time snapshot of your finances that's actually easy on the eyes.
Exactly.
I can get behind that. Much more appealing than rows and rows of numbers. Okay, tip number 3 is a big one. Avoid blame. Again, sounds simple, but when you're stressed about money, it's like blame just jumps out ready to fight. How do we actually shift from pointing fingers to finding solutions?
Oh, it's tough, isn't it? Our brains are kind of hardwired to find a scapegoat when things go wrong. But a helpful trick is to consciously reframe the situation. Instead of me versus you, think us versus the problem.
Ooh, I like that. Like, we're in this together, sink or swim.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And just like in any good teamwork scenario, you got to support each other, even when things get messy. Remember that home renovation show, the one with the couple who were comically bad at laying tiles?
Oh, yeah, they were hilarious.
But through all those botched attempts, they kept laughing, kept supporting each other, even with grout all over the place. And you know what? It worked. Their teamwork made even a tiling disaster entertaining.
It's a great reminder that we're partners, not opponents.
Right.
Right? Especially when the going gets tough or, the tiles start falling apart. All right, moving on to emotional support. Because money, well, it's not just about numbers, it's emotionally charged, to say the least. So just
Yeah.
saying, don't worry, it'll be okay, that's not going to cut it, right?
You're so right. It's about really listening to your partner, understanding their financial fears and anxieties, validating their feelings, even if you don't fully get where they're coming from.
It's about empathy, right? Like putting yourself in their shoes, even if their financial fears are different from your own. Are there other practical tips for offering that emotional support?
Absolutely. One thing that can help is scheduling a dedicated worry time each week. Sounds a little strange, maybe, but it can be really effective.
Worry time. Okay. Like
Mhm.
setting aside a specific time to let it all out.
Exactly. By containing those anxieties to a specific time and duration, it frees you both up to be more present and supportive throughout the rest of the week. You're acknowledging the worries, but also putting healthy boundaries around them.
Interesting. So you're not ignoring the issues, but you're choosing when and how to address them. Love it. Okay, on to our final tip for this deep dive. Seeking professional advice. I feel like there's still a stigma around asking for help, especially when it comes to money. Like, we should just instinctively know how to manage it all. At what point does it become clear that it's time to call in the experts?
I think the should part is what trips a lot of people up. We put so much pressure on ourselves to have it all figured out. But look, it's like going to the doctor when something's not right.
Right.
We wouldn't hesitate to seek help for a physical ailment, so why do we hesitate when it comes to our finances? A good financial advisor can be a game changer.
So true. They're professionals trained to help you navigate those tricky financial waters. Reaching out isn't admitting defeat, it's taking control. Are there any specific situations where having a financial advisor on your team would be especially beneficial?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Big life changes are a big one. Getting married, having a baby, buying a home, those events come with a whole new set of financial complexities. Or maybe you're just completely lost when it comes to things like investments or retirement planning. Those are all great times to call in reinforcements.
Having an expert in your corner, someone who's been there, done that, I love it.
Exactly.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. We took those common tips for managing finances as a couple, the ones we see everywhere, and with your help, we really dug into the how and the why behind them.
My pleasure. I always say knowledge is power.
Yeah,
And when it comes to relationships and finances, well, a little knowledge can go a long way.
absolutely. Well said. Now, before we wrap up, here's something to ponder, something we didn't come across in our research, but is definitely worth considering. Do you think having those conversations about prenups or legal agreements before marriage or moving in together would help prevent some of these stressful financial conversations down the line? Or would it create this sense of distrust from the get-go? It's a tricky one, something to think about.